Tatsuya Ichihashi was born on January 5, 1979 in Gifu Prefecture, Japan. He came from a well-educated and affluent family, with his father working as a surgeon and his mother as a dentist. This privileged background likely placed significant expectations on Ichihashi from an early age. Growing up, he split his time between Gifu and Chiba Prefecture. Despite his family's successful background, Ichihashi struggled to meet both his family's expectations and his own. He faced difficulties in his academic pursuits, failing exams that would have advanced his career prospects. After these setbacks, Tatsuya eventually settled on studying horticulture at Chiba University. He graduated in 2005 at the age of 26, significantly later than most of his peers. This delay in completing his education may have contributed to feelings of inadequacy or frustration. After completing his degree, Tatsuya found himself struggling to transition into adult life and establish a career. Despite consistent effort, he failed to secure stable employment following graduation. His inability to find work led him to become what is known in Japan as a NEET, which stands for not in education, employment, or training. This status was particularly challenging for someone from his background, as there were high expectations placed upon him by his family and society. Despite his unemployment, Tatsuya maintained a comfortable lifestyle due to the financial support provided by his parents. They supplied him with a monthly allowance of approximately 100,000 yen, roughly $750 at the time, which allowed him to rent a spacious 3-bedroom apartment in Ichikawa. During this period, Tatsuya developed an intense focus on physical fitness, which became almost an obsession. Police reports described him as regularly attending a gym and cycling about 25 kilometers each day. This dedication to fitness may have been a way for him to maintain a sense of purpose and structure in his otherwise unproductive life. Interestingly, despite his apparent social isolation, Tatsuya was involved in a romantic relationship during this time. He had been dating a woman who worked at Tokyo Disneyland for about a year prior to the events that would later unfold. This relationship seemed to have a significant impact on him, as evidenced by his choice of thesis topic for his university graduation. He wrote about the landscaping at Disneyland inspired by his girlfriend's workplace. The couple's relationship appeared to have gotten pretty serious, as they had taken trips together. Additionally, Tatsuya had begun learning English, possibly in preparation for studying abroad. However, there were signs of instability in the relationship. On numerous occasions, Tatsuya had broached the idea of ending their relationship, indicating some level of emotional turmoil or uncertainty about his future. As time progressed, Tatsuya's mental state seemed to deteriorate. According to Naoki Motoyama, a former mentor and professor emeritus at Chiba University, Tatsuya expressed a desire to become financially independent from his parents around the end of March 2007. This desire for independence coincided with a period of psychological instability noted by Motoyama. Tatsuya's post-graduation life was also marked by an interest in violent manga, as reported by the police. While it's important not to draw direct correlations between media consumption and behavior, this detail provides insight into Tatsuya's interests and possibly his state of mind during this period. It's also worth noting that Tatsuya had a previous brush with the law 6 years prior to the events of 2007. He had been involved in an alleged theft and injury incident, which was settled out of court. While this didn't result in a criminal record, it suggests a pattern of problematic behavior that predated his post-graduation struggles. As 2007 progressed, Tatsuya's behavior became increasingly erratic. Now, before we continue, I need to introduce another central figure in this case, that being Lindsay Ann Hawker. She was a 22-year-old British woman who moved to Japan in October 2006 to teach English. Born on December 30th, 1984 in Coventry, England, she came from a close-knit family in Brandon, Warwickshire. Lindsay was an accomplished student, graduating from the University of Leeds with a first-class honors degree in biology in 2006. She decided to take a year off before pursuing a master's degree and found employment at Nova, Japan's largest private English conversation school at the time. Fast forward to March 20th, 2007, Lindsay encountered Tatsuya on a train in Tokyo. Tatsuya, then 28 years old, approached the British teacher and struck up a conversation. He initially claimed to want to learn English from her. Intrigued, Lindsay engaged in conversation with him. After this initial meeting on the train, Tatsuya followed Lindsay as she cycled home. When they arrived at her apartment, he asked for a glass of water. Feeling sympathetic, she allowed him inside, but as a precaution, introduced him to her two flatmates. During this brief visit, Tatsuya drew a picture of Lindsay and provided his contact information. This interaction led to an agreement for her to give Tatsuya an English lesson at a cafe 4 days later. On Saturday, March 24th, the two met at the agreed-upon location for the lesson. After their meeting, which seemed to proceed without incident, they took a taxi to Tatsuya's apartment, located only a few hundred yards away from the cafe. Lindsay, likely feeling cautious, instructed the taxi driver to wait. However, after 7 minutes of her not returning, the driver left the scene. What transpired inside the apartment over the next hours remains partially unclear, but the outcome was undeniably horrific. According to Tatsuya's later confession in court, he raped Lindsay almost immediately after they entered his apartment. He then attempted to prevent her from screaming by covering her mouth, which led to her suffocation. The forensic evidence painted a grim picture of a prolonged and violent attack. Lindsay's body showed extensive bruising across her upper body, including egg-sized bruises on the left side of her face. Police investigators believe these bruises were likely the result of being punched repeatedly. Lesser marks on her upper body indicated she had collided with furniture during the struggle. During the assault, Tatsuya broke the cartilage in Lindsay's neck, leading to her death. After she died, Tatsuya shaved her head, though the reason for this action remains unclear. In the aftermath of the murder, Tatsuya took steps to conceal his crime. He moved the victim's body to the balcony of his 4th-floor apartment. There, he buried her in a bathtub that he had filled with a mixture of sand and compost soil. Tatsuya had purchased these materials over the course of 6 visits to his local hardware store in the hours leading up to the arrival of the police on March 26th. Investigators later discovered that Tatsuya had sprayed the soil mixture with a substance used to compact and decompose waste. This action suggested that he may have been planning to either bury the body in concrete or wait until it had decomposed. The bathtub burial was not simply a matter of covering the body with sand, as some early media reports had suggested. Instead, it was a calculated attempt to eliminate the evidence. Neighbors later reported hearing sounds of something striking metal and objects being dragged during the night of March 25th and early morning of March 26th. These noises were likely the sounds of the killer moving the bathtub from the bathroom to the balcony and filling it with the soil mixture. When police eventually gained access to the apartment, they found a disturbing scene. Lindsay's possessions were strewn across the room, indicating a chaotic struggle. Her body was discovered in the bathtub on the balcony, bound and gagged with plastic ties and scarves. One particularly haunting detail noted by one of the investigators was that one of her hands was protruding from the soil mixture. The discovery of the body came after she was reported missing. Nova, the language school where she worked, contacted the police at 2:30 p.m. on March 26th after she failed to teach her scheduled classes on both March 25th and 26th. This alert set in motion the events that would lead to the grim discovery at the apartment. However, the investigation was not without its missteps. When Lindsay's friends initially tried to contact the police, there was a communication mistake within the department, and the message was not conveyed to the proper authorities. When police finally arrived at the apartment at 5:40 p.m. on March 26th, they were initially not permitted to enter without proper cause. The officers noticed a movement inside the darkened apartment and, aware of a previous allegation against Tatsuya, called for backup at 7 p.m. Within an hour, 7 more officers had arrived on the scene. The crucial moment came when Tatsuya left his apartment barefoot and wearing a rucksack. Upon realizing the police presence, he began to flee. In a series of blunders, the police failed to apprehend him. One officer managed to grab the rucksack, but he continued running. The lack of radios among the officers meant those on the 4th floor couldn't alert their colleagues on the ground. Tatsuya managed to escape by vaulting down the last few feet of the stairway and zigzagging through the streets. This escape marked the beginning of Ichihashi's life as a fugitive, which would last for over 2 years. Immediately after his escape, Tatsuya began his journey across Japan, constantly moving to avoid detection. He initially traveled to the northern prefecture of Aomori, where he lived rough during the summer months of 2007. Afterward, he decided to embark on a pilgrimage to some of the 88 temples that make up the sacred Buddhist route through the mountains of Shikoku Island. This decision may have been motivated by a need for reflection or atonement, as Tatsuya later wrote in his book that during this journey he wished Lindsay Hawker could, quote, come back to life, suggesting feelings of remorse or guilt. His survival skills were put to the test when he spent time on the tiny island of Oha in southern Japan. With a circumference of fewer than 2 miles and home to just 4 families, the island provided an ideal hiding spot. Here, Tatsuya lived in a concrete bunker, likely a remnant from World War II. He sustained himself on wild fruit, fish he caught and cooked over an open fire, and even resorted to eating snakes. Throughout his time as a fugitive, Ichihashi was constantly afraid of being recognized. This fear drove him to take drastic measures to alter his appearance. He performed crude plastic surgery on himself, including removing 2 distinctive moles from his left cheek with a box cutter. This painful and dangerous procedure was likely done without anesthesia, highlighting the man's desperation. In addition to removing his moles, he also attempted to change other facial features. He sliced off part of his lower lip with scissors to make it appear thinner. In an even more extreme measure, he attempted to change the shape of his nose by sewing it with a needle and thread, a procedure he described as being like a cook trussing a piece of meat. These efforts to change his appearance were not limited to these crude self-surgeries. He also grew his hair long and often wore surgical masks, which are common in Japan, especially during allergy seasons. This allowed him to blend in with the crowd while concealing much of his face. For the most extended period of his time on the run, Tatsuya worked on construction sites in Osaka. He lived in a dormitory but was known for not mixing with other staff members and maintaining a low profile to avoid detection. In his free time, he devoted himself to studying languages, including French, possibly as a way to prepare for a potential escape abroad or simply to occupy his mind. His ability to find work on construction sites was crucial to his survival and his plans to further alter his appearance. Over time, he managed to save nearly 1 million yen, approximately $12,000 at the time, from his construction jobs. He used most of this money to fund 2 professional plastic surgery operations. The first operation was to acquire a longer and narrower nose, while the second was to raise the bridge of his nose. These surgeries were more sophisticated than his earlier self-performed procedures and significantly changed his appearance. Tatsuya also had the bridge of his nose raised and had double folds cut into his eyelids because he wanted to look more Western. Ironically, it was Tatsuya's attempts to change his appearance that ultimately led to his capture. Staff at the second clinic where he underwent plastic surgery became suspicious of the traces of removed moles on his cheek. They reported his visit to the police and sent photos, which were then publicized in Japanese newspapers. Tatsuya Ichihashi's life as a fugitive came to an end on November 10, 2009, after 2 years and 7 months on the run. After the reports to the police, the new information was circulated through various media outlets. Eventually, Tatsuya saw the news about his cosmetic surgery on TV and realized his time was running out. In his book, he described his reaction, "My heart raced. I gazed at it trembling." Knowing that his capture was imminent, Tatsuya made one last desperate attempt to change his appearance. He immediately checked out of his hotel, got a haircut, and even bought a party disguise set containing a beard, sideburns, and a mustache. On the day of his capture, Tatsuya was at the Osaka Nanko ferry terminal, attempting to board a ferry to Okinawa. Police officers at the terminal recognized him, likely due to the widely circulated wanted posters and recent media coverage of his plastic surgeries. When approached by an officer who asked for his name, Tatsuya, for the first time in 2 years and 7 months, gave his real name. This admission marked the end of one of Japan's most intensive manhunts. The arrest was a significant event in Japan. It was captured on video, showing Tatsuya being led away by police officers. The footage of his arrest was widely broadcast across Japanese media, bringing a sense of closure to a case that had captivated the nation for years. In the immediate aftermath of his arrest, he did not confess to the crime. However, as the legal process unfolded, he eventually admitted to assaulting Lindsay Hawker and causing her death, though he maintained that he had not intended to kill her. Following his arrest, the case moved into the legal system. Tatsuya was initially charged with abandoning a body and later served 2 more warrants for rape and murder. His 23-day period of detention without charge expired on December 2, 2009. During this period, his lawyers alleged that he was threatened with the death penalty if he did not speak, contributing to his initial reticence to fatigue and stress. On December 23rd, one of his lawyers announced that Tatsuya had acknowledged his involvement in Lindsay's death, but maintained that he had not intended to kill her and had attempted artificial resuscitation. In an unexpected turn of events, Tatsuya wrote a book titled Until the Arrest, which was published on January 25, 2011 while he was in custody awaiting trial. The 238-page book detailed his life on the run, including his attempts to change his appearance and his experiences hiding in various parts of Japan. In the book's introduction, he wrote, "I wrote this account as one way of expressing my regret over the crime I committed." He also stated through his lawyers that he wanted any royalties from the book to be given as compensation to Lindsay's family. The publication of the book was controversial, with the Hawker family expressing their disgust that he had been allowed to write it. Tatsuya's trial began on July 4th, 2011, more than 4 years after the murder. The case was tried under Japan's relatively new lay judge system, where citizens participate in judging serious criminal cases alongside professional judges. This aspect of the trial raised concerns about whether Tatsuya could receive a fair trial given the extensive media coverage the case had received over the years. During the trial, Tatsuya admitted to and causing Lindsay's death, but denied intending to kill her. He told the court, "I did not intend to kill her, but I am responsible for her death. I am very sorry for what I did." His defense argued that he had accidentally suffocated Hawker while trying to prevent her from crying out for help. The trial concluded on July 21st, 2011, with the Chiba District Court sentencing Tatsuya Ichihashi to life imprisonment for the murder of Lindsay Hawker. Judge Masaya Hada said Tatsuya had strangled Hawker for at least 3 minutes, demonstrating a, quote, clear premeditation to kill. The judge decided against the death penalty, citing the lack of a prior criminal record and the slight possibility of rehabilitation due to his age. The Hawker family, who had traveled to Japan for the trial and verdict, expressed that they felt justice had been served. Bill Hawker, Lindsay's father, told journalists, "We've waited 4.5 years to get justice for Lindsay. We have achieved that today." Following his conviction, Tatsuya's defense team appealed the life sentence. However, on April 12, 2012, the Tokyo High Court upheld the original ruling. The court maintained that Tatsuya had intended to kill Lindsay, rejecting the defense's argument that he was unaware his arm was under her neck during the struggle. As of 2023, Tatsuya is reportedly serving his sentence in Nagano prison. According to an account from a former inmate, he maintains a relatively comfortable life in prison. He reportedly has about 1 million yen on deposit, allowing him to frequently purchase new clothing and other necessities. His parents, both medical professionals, are said to visit him monthly.